Ideally, collaborative research would start at the beginning of a study. Perhaps the ideas would even come from the people that you're doing research with. So you would have enough of a relationship with them that you'd be discussing different ideas. And even if part of the idea was yours, you'd always be reaching out to say, let's say you were writing a research grant or it's going to be for a dissertation or something where, focus of the ideas would come from you, of course. Then you'd be reaching out to say, well, what else is of interest with you? Or truly, I can think of a case where a group came and said to my research group, we would like you to research us for these following reasons. And that's rare. I understand that research participants don't always do that. But the more you have an ongoing relationship with them, the more you have the opportunity for that. And this is why I think it's very important that courses like this and our introductory research courses teach collaborative research. Because if we don't start to think about this until we're an early career researcher or towards the end of a study, we miss a lot of opportunities to start developing these kinds of relationships. Now, let's say you're a later career researcher and you're just starting to think about these ideas. There's absolutely no reason that you can't also start to develop these relationships with the communities of interest, but the earlier we can start thinking about this in our research, the better. So you can collaborate with members from the research group and with other researchers, and then maybe with other researchers who are from the community of interest. So there's a lot of different ways that collaboration can occur. Collaboration may come in many forms, such as you could form what they think of as a research advisory board, and you form this prior to the research, and it's composed of community members. So I'm thinking about a student study I recently worked with where they were studying a certain aspect of a campus college. And so they asked members from the staff who were in that part of the campus college to be on this advisory board. And they met with them through the whole process of the research and would check in. For example, what about these research questions? What ideas do you have around this interview guide? Moving the whole way through. And now I gave an example that since most of us are nested in universities makes easy sense, but my own area is early childhood along with other things. And I could easily do this with young children. You can sit there and discuss this with young children. I would put forward that there's not a group that I can think of, as long as they are able to communicate, that couldn't be active in this part of the research design. This fits the idea in qualitative research of an expert check, a peer check, and a member check. And so it's quite related to that, where we ask participants for their ideas as we go through the study. We ask other peers, we might ask an expert, but it is more than that. It becomes comprehensive and not a one-off that we do one time. It's across the entire process, even to the extent where some researchers write with the people that they research. I'll give another example. It was a dissertation in gerontology that I worked with, by Becky de Oliveira, and she was studying older people's activity at the active community they lived at. And she invited people to do the research with her, and some of the people were busy and were really glad to be part of the research, but didn't want to be the researchers. But two of the people were very involved, even to the extent that one reviewed a lot of the data, and then one reviewed the entire chapter and dissertation that came out of it also, and gave different ideas, and definitely were gatekeepers that helped get the participants on the front end of the study. So this can occur in a lot of ways. When possible, as I said, from the conception of the research, consider how to craft it collaboratively. The emphasis is on the community members over what we traditionally think of as professional experts, such as a professor. You want to keep in mind that the participants may not be interested in collaboration. The dissertation I referenced by Becky is in the reference list at the end. You can get the full dissertation through ProQuest, of course, and read more deeply about her work in collaboration. She has a lot of suggestions about it. And she says that she identified among the older people that she worked with that they tended to have a general interest in the topic. So they were in an active community. And so they were generally interested. That's why they were part of it. But they also might have a conditional interest. So they could only do so much such as this interview, or they could only keep a notebook of thoughts, and that was it. And then others could be very minimally interested and perhaps were even just in the study because the gatekeepers were a friend of them or something like that. So if research participants aren't overly interested in collaborative research, continue to seek collaboration with other researchers and community members when possible. And then ask yourself, is there anything about the research design that could be made to be more welcoming? So we can't just assume that everybody will be receptive to collaborative research is the point. Becky identified the research participants' preferred conversations over helping develop or administer, for example, the community survey she had developed. So you could develop a practice during the research and when ending a study of asking questions about what the research process was like for the research participants, as Becky did, and then she was able to forward information that would help future researchers think about how to more effectively do collaborative research. Up next, creating a comprehensive, culturally responsive literature review.